Hello folks, and welcome back to Taking the Tech Exam with WM7X. And today we're going to be talking about bands, but not these kinds of bands, these kinds of bands. A band is just a range of frequencies that have similar uses or characteristics. And this chart, which I guarantee you're going to want to have, shows the amateur radio bands, the frequency ranges that we use. And they're just part of the overall radio spectrum. You can kind of think of the radio spectrum as a giant multi-lane highway where each lane or band is reserved for certain kinds of traffic. One lane carries FM radio stations, another is used for cell phone signals, and another for Wi-Fi, and so on. And by dividing up the spectrum into bands, we can organize the different radio signals so that they don't interfere with one another. And by the way, the radio spectrum is just part of an even larger spectrum, which includes things like microwaves and visible light, X-rays, gamma rays, and so on. And they're all electromagnetic radiation, and they all travel at the speed of light, just like radio waves. But today we really just want to focus on the radio frequencies, which we call RF for short. And there's actually a question about that in the exam pool. They want to know what RF means. And now you know, it means radio frequency signals of all types. But we're most interested in the ham bands, the amateur radio bands. So let's focus on that. I've shown a few bands here, and you'll notice that I labeled them with wavelength. Now, technically, a band is a range of frequencies, but as you know, we can always convert back and forth between frequency and wavelength. We use a single wavelength number for each band, and that gives us an approximate idea of what frequency range we're talking about. So if this question pops up on your exam, you'll be all set. And you'll also know what people are talking about when they say stuff like 10 meters is hopping. They're just saying that the 10-meter band is really active. And by the way, as a technician, you'll have access to part of the 10-meter band, which is pretty cool. Okay, if we use a wavelength to identify a band, how do we do that exactly? And let's look at the 2-meter band as an example. All right, we know that 2 meters is equivalent to 50 megahertz, so you might be thinking the 2-meter band starts at 150. No? Okay, well maybe it ends at 150. No? Well, then maybe it's centered at 150. No such luck. The 2-meter band runs from 144 to 148 megahertz. It doesn't even include 150. And I know that's a bit of a head scratcher. And unfortunately, it's a similar story for a bunch of other bands as well. And there are historical reasons for how it ended up this way. But the upshot is that there's going to be some memorization involved in learning the bands. Okay, let's make this more concrete by going through a couple of the exam questions. This question wants to know which band includes 146.52 megahertz, and we just use our rule to convert the frequency into a wavelength, and we get pretty close to 2 meters. And fortunately, every other answer is way off, so we're good on this one. The next question is a little tougher. They want to know which frequency is in the 6-meter band. So this time we convert from 6 meters to a frequency and we get 50 megahertz. But there's two of the questions that are pretty close to 50, so which one is it? And unfortunately, in this case, you just have to remember that even though 49 is close to 50, it's actually not in the 6-meter band. 52.525 is the right answer. Sorry about that. It's just one of those things you have to learn. But there is something you can do about it. Get yourself a band plan. And we'll put a link to one in the description, so take a look there. Just look at how happy you'll be with this band plan. It has all the details about where the bands start and stop and what you can do inside of each band with your license. It also shows you which bands you can use with your technician license and the bands you'll be able to use once you get your general and amateur extra upgrades. All right, you're not going to need to know everything in this chart to pass your tech exam, but over time, as you're using the bands more and more, you'll get to know them and you'll get to remember them. Okay, one more thing before we wrap up. Let's take this lane analogy a little bit further. You know those time-lapse pictures of car headlights? The streaks show us where the cars are over a period of time. And a lot of radios have displays that give us a similar sort of view. They give us a streak for each signal at its location in the band. And they look something like this. Each streak is showing us a signal at a separate frequency within a band, like the 10-meter band. And a typical voice signal here is only about 3 kilohertz wide. And a CW signal, Morse code, is only a couple of 100 hertz wide, so very narrow. So we can fit a lot of signals into a single band because they're not very wide. And the width of the signal is called its band width. All right, file that away. It's another term you'll hear about a lot. Okay, I hope you've got a good feel for what the ham bands are and how they help us keep things organized, and hopefully you've learned a few more exam answers along the way. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And if you want more tips on how to join the hobby or upgrade your license, click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We'll see you in the next video.